My name is David T. Little, and I'm a composer. Sin Eater is a brand new piece that looks at the relationship of food and power in a very particular way. It was inspired by this discovery 10, 15 years ago of the practice of sin eating, which you can find specific evidence of it in Wales, but it was at various times spread throughout the sort of broader region. Basically, it's where in a community, a person of means dies, and there's a ritual that is performed where a loaf of bread and sometimes also a bowl of beer are placed on the corpse. And the idea is that the bread and the beer absorb the sins of the deceased. The bread and beer is then fed to a poor member of the community, described in some of the research as a rascal from the outskirts of town, who is paid a little something to essentially eat the bread and drink the beer and take on the sins of the deceased. So ultimately, every time this person takes on these sins, they are carrying more sins and more sins, eventually basically carrying the sins of their community and becoming further ostracized and further damned to, eternal suffering in the great beyond, I found this concept many, many years ago, I think 10 or 15 years ago. And I knew I wanted to do something with it. I was really fascinated by the idea. And it took me a long time to figure out what it was. So it was around 2018, 2019, I started reading articles about Facebook and social media content moderators who were experiencing PTSD because of what they were having to see repeatedly online as part of their job. And it made me realize that we still live in a time where we are inflicting suffering on many people in their work so that those of us who aren't having those jobs can live more comfortably and kind of live in a kind of obliviousness to the fact that this is even happening. Started with social media content moderators. I was very aware of the trauma that soldiers take on from my work with soldier songs and my research for that piece. Food processing plants. I think we live in a society where women and people of color take on disproportionate trauma. And so all of these worlds came together to share this experience. With a piece like Sin Eater that is really based on a concept or an idea, the first phase of work for me is really a lot of research, a lot of reading, and looking for texts that resonate with the idea and also illuminate things that I maybe hadn't been thinking of previously. Fairly along in the process of writing Sin Eater, I encountered a quote from James Baldwin that is, "The powerless must do their own dirty work. The powerful have it done for them." And that could almost be the thesis of the piece in a way. And the more I looked into that frame, the more I looked at work from the frame of trauma, a lot of different things emerged. And so Sin Eater, my new piece, is really about the ways that this is dispersed through culture and through our world. And the piece starts by looking at something very ancient. And, it looks at the sin eating practice, and it looks at Jonathan Swift, the 1700s, and Louis XIV, and these certain rituals that use food to express power. And then we take a turn and we go into things that are current and that are part of our lives today. But, playing with satire, playing with the grotesque, the idea of the grotesque, I call the piece a ritual grotesquerie. And it is a piece that uses the grotesque to communicate these ideas and to illuminate these sort of very disturbing things. And we start out thinking it's very funny. You feel a little satire in it. You feel the certain energy, and then it takes a turn, and then you realize it's not so funny anymore. The piece really spans, 200 years of writers who are all writing about this question of power in some way. Once I realized what the piece was really about, that it was about looking at the Sin Eater through history, I thought, well, obviously this is a piece with voice, and the group who is most perfect in the world to develop this with is the Crossing. It's for the Crossing, 24 voices with string quartet, with additional synthesizer and percussion, which is played by the members of the choir. The combination of all of these together is used to illuminate the issue from many angles. The sound of the human voice can explore all of those things, I think, better than almost anything. And so I think, it's a piece that spins around the ideas that it's exploring. And by the end of the piece, I'm hoping the audience will leave with a real sense of the depth of the question and the depth of the problem that it's exploring, and will leave them with questions that they have to ask themselves about how they operate in the world.